How you doing? Once again, my name is Brian, and you were watching or listening to the Live Life Now podcast. Today's episode here, I was gonna go a little in depth on some of my writing and talk about what it's like to be an author of books, articles, and blogs, and go a little bit into can you get paid for it? It's much like being a musician in some aspects. And generally speaking, in the creative arts, it can be tough to get paid for things. People expect things given to them for free, or easily available for download or for streaming or for ebooks or free articles on a website or whatever. It's harder to get people to pay for things they're used to getting for free, typically, in my experience. But, anyways, going into specifics here, I have, as of the time of this video, authored 2 books. My first book was called Family Traveling the World. It is a book about my life experiences traveling with a family with a wife at the time and 2 children, and figuring out all the logistics along with all the wild stories that happened during that time, and how it all came together and how it all fell apart a few occasions, and just how, basically just the breakdown of everything. And the reason that one happened, the reason I wrote that book in the first place, is because people would know about my travels, friends, family, and at least on a couple of occasions, different people would tell me, they'd be like, you should write a book about all these experiences. You should keep track of the places you're going and like write down itineraries, because you're not going to remember all this stuff and you want to be able to document it. And I agreed. Once they gave me the idea, I was like, that's a great idea. They're 100% right. And even to this day, there's many times I'll think back to something and I'll be like, what's the name of that place? Or where was that? I can literally go back at this point and find exactly where I was each day of a 2.5-year travel experience, and maybe not know all the things I did, but at least the generalization of where I went and what was I up to. And I wouldn't have been able to do that unless people really asked me to. And on top of that, I've always kind of liked to write. I remember writing stories. I had a psychology class, and they used to make us just write all the time about different subjects, and they told us to keep it, and I ended up keeping it all these years. And I've always been kind of a creative person in general anyway, even from when I was really young. So anyways, writing, it just felt good. It felt good to share these stories. There was a lot of funny experiences and some not funny, and I wanted people to know the realities of what it was like. Uh, it wasn't all happy-go-lucky all the time. And I think I wanted to bring the reality of what this truly was like, and not sugarcoat things. And that was my goal behind the book. Not only document and tell some funny stories. For example, I snuck into Stonehenge. I ran into Chuck Norris. My goodness, you name it, man. I would get injured and sick, and other people would too, and had some really difficult experiences while in India. I got lost a couple of times from the group. You name it. I met a lot of people on the way. I would do these Airbnbs and sometimes befriend people. When I was teaching in Colombia, I often made friends with the students and the teachers, especially with the teachers and the staff. And there was always a lot of stuff. So anyways, writing that book was easy in a lot of ways because it was just telling stories. Thankfully, I had taken journalism classes back in college, and I was familiar with formatting of things. And even, of course, back in school, they would always kind of teach you like the 5-paragraph formats. And this was just an extended version of that. And a lot of it is not only just the details you tell, but talking about, in a way that people can imagine it and they can picture themselves in those scenarios. And you make people feel something with what you've written, not only to hear how amazing it was or how not amazing it was, but also kind of put themselves in your shoes for a moment and relate to you on a level. So you have to be a really good storyteller. And there is a lot of editing that goes into it. And I certainly could have done even more editing. Looking back at my first book, I have things that I'm like, wow, why didn't I take more time with this or that? But I had been working on and off on this book idea since I began traveling. So from 2015, I have ultimately ended up publishing in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. I just wanted to get it out of there. I was tired of thinking about it. I was like, let's just get it over with. Now, publishing a book typically is a difficult process. You got to get people to care about it. And once again, much like a musician, people don't know you, and it's hard to get your name out there. The people that really do well with it go through years of trying to sell their books to different publishing companies. They probably have an agent. They invest a lot of things that I wasn't really willing to invest. So I have a friend who had self-published books and had mentioned there's different websites to do that. And I just thought, hey, that sounds like a good idea to me. Ultimately, I don't expect a ton of people to read it. And even if they do want to read it, cool. I just want to be able to have like a physical copy in my hand of my own book. And, it's kind of like an album. It's like, I just wanted to be able to say, hey, look, I did this. Here it is in my hand. And if you read it, great. I'm happy to hear it. If you don't, that's okay too. That doesn't define me as a person or stop me from wanting to do it again. It's just, you do it for yourself at the end of the day. At least I did. So that book, I did let people read it over, but really I didn't. I just put it out there. There wasn't much beyond that. I didn't overthink it. Ultimately, I had overthought it enough rereading the stories and this little detail, and so be it. Anyway, so that was my first book, the one about the traveling. But I've done a lot of other writing. Years before that, I have written a lot about music. I put a lot of different things online, a lot of like blog type of posts, a lot of stuff in message boards and stuff. And one of the subjects I focused on the most was the rock band Nirvana. And I have stuff posted on websites that have had millions of views. And my documents have appeared on those sites for decades in some cases, or at the very least, at least a full decade, if not 2 decades at this point. And I used to have my own websites, and I used to have different things that I had multiple websites of different subjects over the years. So I'm used to putting my stuff out there, and not only with words, but with music, with any type of art. Even what you see behind me was an art piece I created at a splatter studio. So I'm always like that with creative stuff. But when writing for blogs and things, it's a little different. Obviously, you don't have the luxury of going on and on about something. You have to sum up things much more concisely. I once again was writing about personal experiences, or at least personal thoughts and opinions. So that was definitely similar. But at the same time, it's a whole different thing. The book, obviously, my books were long, hundreds and hundreds of pages. I've also released a second book that was a collection of all my song lyrics and poetry. I had been writing stuff like that since the mid 90s, basically. And I finally ended up releasing that here just about 2 years ago or so, but I believe it was 2022. And it's called Subliminal Messages. And it's a collection of my lifelong poetry and lyrics. And I'm very proud of that one too. If anything, that one was easier because while it was also scary putting out something, in some cases, some of the thoughts and feelings were extremely personal to specific moments of my life. There's enough in there that I felt people could relate to. And I often, when I write lyrics and poetry, I often write them in a way that they can be interpreted in different ways. I try to write more abstract and maybe vague so that the reader or the listener or whatever can come up with their own opinions and conclusions that relate to their personal experiences. Or they can try to guess what I was writing about. Sometimes I don't even know what I was writing about. It just came out of me. And some lyrics and poetry may be talking about specific things, but it may be talking about multiple different subjects. Maybe the 4 lines were written one day, and then another couple of lines were written another day about a completely different subject. And I also collage piece things together. So if I need something for song lyrics, sometimes you need the right amount of syllables to line up. And I'm picking and choosing from other things I've written previously that had nothing to do with it. So there's a lot of different ways that poetry and lyrics come together. Sometimes you write the music first. Sometimes you write the lyrics first. I'm more of a music first person, for sure. I've done the large majority that way. And then you come up with the lyrics after the fact. But on a few occasions, I have done it the opposite way. And writing to the words can be another way to be creative and to write music and songs. So I had the 2 books. I had all the Nirvana blogs. But I also, during the pandemic, started not wanting to be in person to work. And I started trying to look into other options out there. I was going through a tough time. I was going through my divorce process, and just was not in a great place in life. So the writing was helpful, and I found different jobs, but mainly, and they were not paying well by any means, but they did give me purpose, and I did get better with time. First one I wrote for was a website called Young Entertainment Magazine, and the person in charge was very nice, but had very specific ideas of what he wanted. Unfortunately, he wasn't good at expressing what those ideas were all the time. Sometimes I'd write full articles, and then it'd be like, "Oh, can you add this or delete this?" Or that's not what I had in mind. And I end up rewriting stuff sometimes multiple times to try to get whatever his vision was, even if he didn't know what his vision was until I wrote something or submitted something to him. So it can be very frustrating at times. And there were times where we were writing about movies and TV shows that were specific to young adults. And I wasn't always familiar with what the current younger generation was into. I'm a little older than the target audience of the people that will be reading that website. So I had to familiarize myself with a bunch of movies and TV shows that I had never seen before. So there was a whole research process that went into it. So after a while, I realized like that was not ultimately what I was looking for. I was not getting paid much. I found a little bit of a better situation with a site called MovieWeb. They are affiliated with other websites. If ever you see kind of like pop culture type of sites where they're constantly spitting out articles, MovieWeb is an offshoot of that. They are a Canadian-based company, and they used to pay me through both Young Entertainment Magazine and MovieWeb paid me through either PayPal or Venmo or something along those lines. So it wasn't like a normal paycheck. There was definitely not set salary or anything. I get paid per completed project. MovieWeb was more structured. There was usually a list of articles to choose from to write from. You could add your own ideas, and if they were accepted, then they would let you write about them. But there was also more work that went into setting up the article. You would have to format things to fit into a specific size and subject. And there was kind of like a formula to the way their articles were written. Also, you were required to go in and find photos off the internet that could be used, that were obviously copyrighted photos, but could be altered or could be put on your site. And you would have to put little credits in there from where those photos came from to credit the original photography or website for their using their works on the MovieWeb website. And sometimes the photos were not accepted or they had to be resized. And just that whole process was an extra thing you had to do on top of writing the articles. The difference there was instead of me having to keep going back and editing my own articles, like with Young Entertainment Magazine, they often had like a kind of like a supervisor that would go in and make changes. But so I had less editing back and forth, but sometimes they made edits that I didn't agree with, or that I would have at least explained my reasoning behind, that I didn't get another say in once I posted them on the site. And that one usually had a lot more views to their pages. I mean, I had one article that I know for a fact had over 30,000 views, and it didn't matter how many views I got. I got paid the same, and once again, it wasn't well. It was crazy how much work and effort I put into these things to get paid so little. So I realized, and I kind of told myself, like, yeah, well, you want to be valued and you want to be paid. I wasn't really doing it for that. I was kind of doing it for my own fun, for my own mental health. Since I wasn't in like a full-time or like real job at that moment, I was kind of in between jobs. And so anyways, that ended up being pretty good, but quickly you get burned out. Those type of things are not long lasting. I ended up writing 75 articles between the two sites, so 75 articles total that I was credited for. Young Entertainment Magazine was 36 articles, and MovieWeb was, I'm sorry, no, Young Entertainment Magazine was 39 articles. MovieWeb was 36. I wrote some other things that either I didn't really get credited for, or I didn't, that they ultimately I'd written but didn't get accepted, so they didn't get posted. So I basically wrote those for free. So I was probably closer to actually written about 80 articles, but 75 officially under my name and posted. So how much did I make from that, you may ask? Honestly, it was somewhere not that much over $1,000 for all 75 of those articles. To be even crazier about it, I lost availability to checking the views on the MovieWeb pages, but they've since republished my articles again later, which starts it all over in the view counts. And also, they make some updates. They have somebody come in and make additions or subtractions to what I've already written. It's their intellectual property once you've written your article. So I know for a fact that I had well over 200,000 views of those 75 articles total, of course, the combination of all 75 articles. But based on time, and those articles are still online, you can go to MovieWeb and Young Entertainment Magazine and search me up, Brian Peterson. You'll see the articles. I believe I've had over 250,000 views between all the articles from MovieWeb and Young Entertainment Magazine combined. And I had potentially over 1 million views of my Nirvana stuff, although that's very tough to gauge, because even though the sites may have had millions of views, there's no guarantee that those millions of views resulted in people checking out my specific items, even if they were at the top of their sites, which to this day, some of them still are, or at least are easy to find. But let's say at least another 250,000 to 500,000 people have read my Nirvana stuff. It's kind of crazy to think about and put in perspective of how many people that really is. I think of stadiums, I think of countries in some cases, or at least like cities, and like how many people have actually seen or read things that I have personally written. It's amazing. I'm happy about it. I like leaving that behind for people to enjoy, and whether I'm credited or not, in some ways, I'm happy that those things are out there and that people have access to them. In regards to the books, I did sell some books, but ultimately not too many. And I made them where I don't even profit from them. I wanted people just to be able to buy them for the best price possible. And my books, Family Travel in the World and Subliminal Messages, are both available on blurb.com. Check my descriptions of these videos for more information. You can get the links, and it just should be much easier to find everything that way. I put everything in there in the descriptions of these videos. So how does it ultimately feel to do these things? Cool. But if I did it for money, I would have been extremely disappointed. How can you make money at these things? I guess don't do what I did. Don't accept little to nothing for your work. Um, you know, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. There's sites like Fiverr where you can try to do projects for people and they pay you for it. But are they paying you much? No, of course not. A lot of those projects, especially if you're an unknown, you're getting paid extremely little because you have to charge so little that people would be willing to go with an unknown that doesn't have reviews. And then once you get your reviews, you can try to charge more once you've proven yourself in some level. But once again, that's uncertain, and there's no guarantee that people will even choose you to do their projects, even if you are cheap. If anything, they might see that as like, oh, well, this person isn't even probably that good or isn't going to make that much effort if that's as little as they're charging for their work. So you may want to go the other route and charge a lot and see if that helps. But find what works for you with that stuff. I'm certainly not the expert on determining how to make a bunch of income off of creative projects. But at the same time, do it for the love of the project, especially if it's not your job. Just know that people are out there reading these things, and there are sites out there that will request your work and be happy to publish it if you submit it to them and you get in contact with the right people. So that's my thoughts on it. Feel free to add anything in the chat or the comments if you have your own techniques or sites that you've used to publish things. And I'll be happy to check them out if you share them. Otherwise, thank you, and thanks for listening. Have a great day.